there, friends and sane persons, and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. You know, the odd thing about the way these cameras work, this shirt is actually the same color as this hat. I don't know why it shows up as orange, but I guess it's just sorcery. And that's a good segue. My name is Kyle, by the way. This is Wednesday Whimsy, which is a short show that I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game, a top 10, some sort of board game related topic, whatever I happen to be thinking about at the time. That's what I talk about. I'm wondering what this thing is over here. Oh, it's my microphone. Oh, there we go. Welcome to the world of recording. I'm gonna push this in just a little bit so it disappears. I'm clearly very focused today, but I'm glad that I am because I get to talk about a game that I've been enjoying a lot lately. And this game is called, I've only brought the box top for one of the games here, but that is Sorcerer Endbringer. So, Sorcerer Endbringer is a cooperative expansion for the game Sorcerer. And Sorcerer is a game that no one talks about, and so I figured maybe I would do so. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sorcerer first, and then I'm going to go into sort of Endbringer and what it makes different. We'll go through this kind of fast because I don't want to make this too long, but let's get going. So we're going to start with Sorcerer. And in Sorcerer, you are some sort of basically evil sorcerer. And you are fighting for control of locations, ideally in old London, but there were some Egyptian ones and some that looked like they were in Cape Cod. But basically, you're fighting for control of some locations. Now, the interesting thing about the game is it's made by the people who brought us Star Realms and Hero Realms, the White Wizard games people, or Wise Wizard as they go by now, and and the interesting thing is this is not a deck building game. It's more of a shuffle building game, kind of like almost Smash Up. Let me pull. Ultimately, you're just trying to get control of 2 out of 3 locations, and if you do, well, you win. So how does it work? And this is where I wanted to pull up the picture, because the picture is kind of interesting here. You have this sort of this board, and you'll see there's a couple of locations, and the locations have beads on them for some reason. I'm not sure this person knows what they're doing, but but that's okay. These locations, they have a certain number of life, and if you're able to sort of get, I think it's more like damage, if you're able to get your opponents all the way to the end, then you win control of the location. But the interesting thing is the game comes with a lot of different decks, and you're going to pick 3 different decks. I think one's called your character deck, one's called your location deck, and one's called your origin deck, I think. And so, location will be a clock tower or an opera house. Your character will be some named person, and there are a bunch of sort of random fantasy sounding names. And then the origin is going to be a type of magic. So are you a demonologist? Are you a thaumaturg? Are you a necromancer? There's going to, and so you're going to take all those decks, you're going to shuffle them together, and that makes your unique grimoire, your unique deck that you're going to use to play. And then the game is just going to go in turns, and this is one of the boards that doesn't come with the game. No, this is right. Okay. You're going to have 6 actions, and on your turn, you're going to take 1 action. And the action could be playing a card, and the cards are going to have a cost on them, and you're going to use this blue power resource to pay for the cards. You could do nothing and just take 2 power, which you sometimes have to do. You could do nothing and just take 2 cards, which is really the only way you'll ever get more cards. And you could do some other actions that your cards let you do. So you're going to go back and forth really quickly, taking your actions. And then, after everyone's taken all 6 actions, you're going to go back to sort of the central area. Well, there you see some of the decks of cards. And, I had that literally up a moment ago. You're going to go back to this central area, and you're going to take turns attacking with the various creatures you have. So, for example, This creature here, it has an attack strength of 1. If it's your turn, you could exhaust it and decide to attack. And the way that you're going to attack is you're going to get rolled dice equal to the value of that creature, the attack value of the creature, and the dice are going to have a miss, they're going to have a skull, which is a damage, and they're going to have a pentagram, which is a critical damage. And the difference between those is that you, the attacker, get to assign the critical damage, and the defender gets to assign the other damage. So, they could split it out so that you don't really get very much. Ultimately, what you're going to try to do is do damage to the location, which is going to move your opponent's slider up on this track, and your ultimate goal is to try and get them out. Kill them. Kill the location. It's kind of weird. But that's what you're doing. Now, there is some interesting kind of back and forth in this attack phase, because you're going to get these tokens called omens, I believe, and they're these little pentagram tokens, and when you're rolling dice, you can spend a pentagram to re-roll one die. And your opponent can also spend the pentagram to force a reroll of a die. And so you're going to be going back and forth until you're either out of these pentagrams, usually, or you're just ready to, you're not willing to invest anymore in this particular battle. And you're going to keep going, kind of repeating those 2 cycles until somebody wins the game. So, talking about Endbringer, now that we kind of have a sense of what the base game is, let's see if I can find Endbringer. I had it just a moment. Here we go. So Endbringer is a cooperative expansion to this. So you're going to have one of 4 big bad guys, and you're going to have a combined life total. And the big bad guys are going to have their own decks. They each have sort of their named deck that's going to kind of govern the actions they do, and then they have a spawn deck, and just like in the base game, you're going to combine those 2. You won't shuffle them together in this game. There will always be sort of the Nemesis deck and I forget what it's called, but the deck that has all the minions in it. And you're going to fight against these Endbringers. They don't have any life. They're immortal, I guess. But they have these pillars, these monoliths, and you're going to be trying to destroy the monolith. And there are rules, of course, for how they're going to. Oh, these are wonderful punchies. There's not a lot. This expansion is pretty new, so there's not a lot of pictures for it. But if you're able to destroy all the monoliths, and there's normally going to be 1 per player in each of the 3 locations, so you're not doing location damage. Instead, you're trying to damage the monolith. Meanwhile, the Endbringer is trying to knock your life all the way down to 0. And it's a combined pool that's, I believe it's 30 per player. So if you're able to knock them down first, you win. If they knock you down, well, you don't win. In fact, you lose. And that's kind of how that works. It's a way to play the game cooperatively. And of course, special. Well, I've already talked about one of the things, and I'm going to talk about Sorcerer first and then Endbringer. What makes Sorcerer special is the interesting combinations you can get. You're going to have 3 different decks that you use each game, and nowadays there's like 10 of each category. So maybe 10 characters, 10 origins, and 10 locations. It might actually be 10 origins and then 15 characters and 12 locations or something like that. But there's a lot. There's the base set plus several sort of one-off pack expansions. It's great. You're going to have a different character to learn, a different sort of flavor that your deck is trying to do. That origin is the most important because it's half of your deck. But as you add in the other things from the different characters, it's going to change kind of how the deck works. For example, there's one deck that's all about demons, and whenever you place a demon, you can activate these fire tokens, and the demons are going to be activating these fire tokens, and the fire tokens don't do any damage, but at the end of the combat, they're going to do the damage. So they're going to do direct damage that can't be avoided, but they're not going to do it until after all is said and done, so that other enemy is going to be able to kind of move and attack and do something to you, but you're going to kill it eventually. And that kind of changes the calculus and the value of the wounds that people get to assign. I played another one that was all about holy magic, and they didn't really have a lot of minions. There were just a few, but they had these kind of holy revelation tokens and this concept of light, which was a separate resource you could accumulate, and then you could play these other cards out of sequence when the card said it could be played, and it would do some great big thing for you. So there's a lot of different, that's just two, right? There's hundreds of combinations, I'm sure. I won't do the math, but lots of combinations that you can do, lots of things you can try. It's just really a very interesting game with a lot of variety. It's also not a particularly long game. It's a two-player, which is really, other than when you add Endbringer, it's really how you should play it. You can play it with 3 or 4, but you really shouldn't. It's not very good at 3 or 4. But it's as a two-player head-to-head, it's just delightful. It's fast, it's back and forth, head-to-head, and it's that kind of a Magic the Gathering or that style of experience that you can play, and it just doesn't feel like anything else. I mean, some parts of it do, the sort of concept of the combat, but the sort of the way everything works and the variety that are in there are really going to be something new and special. Because I have to talk about Endbringer, I'm not going to talk much more about the special things. Let's talk about Endbringer very briefly. It basically takes the game and makes it cooperative. It makes it so that you can easily play a solo version or play a two-player cooperative. If you play with more than two, again, it ends up being this kind of, it slogs the game. It sort of really drags things down because you just have more stuff that's going on and a lot more to keep track of, and that's less fun. But as a 1 or 2-player cooperative game, it's really quite good. You've got 4 big bads and 4 possible spawn decks, and you can mix and match those as well. So you'll have a lot of variety. Each one does something different. For the most part, the rules of the cooperative are pretty good. You're going to flip a card, and it'll largely tell you what to do. It's not a hard cooperative mode. It's a smart one that fits pretty seamlessly into the base game. So if you like Sorcerer, and we're looking for some way to play it separately by yourself, this is a great way to kind of get that experience as well. So where's the but? Well, one thing, the game is kind of dark looking, and so some people will be put off by that, right? Everybody looks pretty evil. And I will say also the rule books, as you add Endbringer in, aren't that clear. Things are kind of put in weird places, and there's not a very good player aid. There is for the base game. You've got this nice player board. Sorry, I guess this makes it special. This nice player board that keeps track of everything. It has the round sequence, the turn sequence. It keeps track of your resources. It's a really good player aid. But once you get into the Endbringer, you got to kind of flip in the rule book. Okay, this procedure is governed on this page, and then the special rules for this type of a bad guy are governed over here. It can get a little bit back and forth and a kind of a mess with the rule book, unfortunately. Another thing that kind of is a little negative here is the game can kind of slow down. That back-to-back, so the dice rolling to do attacks is great, but the use of these omen tokens to re-roll dice can really kind of, it's like, I roll all these dice and then we sort of quibble about 1 or 2 of them. And I spend my tokens, you spend your tokens, I spend my tokens. It can really slow the game down for just a moment or two. Now, as those tokens run out, or if the dice are so much one way or the other, it's going to speed back up again. But just be aware it can get a little sloggy just for a moment or two in those kind of in-between moments. Also, the game does not fit in one box, and that's really disappointing. The box has an insert that's very poorly designed. It has this huge well that's far too big for just the base box, but if you add all the expansions, it's too small. And so, you really have to keep it in 2 boxes. There's really not another way around it. So that's kind of disappointing. So there are some things to think about. So what is my final rating? Well, I'll talk about Sorcerer first. Sorcerer's an 8 out of 10 for me. I really enjoy the concept here. I enjoy the variety. I enjoy the fun. I think there's a lot to explore and a lot to like. I think this game has been overlooked. I don't know that a lot of people have played it, Maybe it came out at the wrong time. I should check and see when it came out. But it says 2019. Well, that might be why. So it's a game that it's a game that really is very interesting and has a lot of promise and a lot of potential. Now, that comes with one caveat, and that is the publisher. Publisher is great at getting its games ready, but they are as slow as can ever be believed. I mean, they did a Kickstarter for this Endbringer. If only I had the ability to check. The Kickstarter that they ran, I mean, it delivered a month or so ago, and they ran it, I think in 2020. It was a ridiculous amount of time, and they kind of do that with all of their products. It's just it's a long lead time for. Sorry, I hope I turned the sound off for that. It's a very long lead time for what you would think is a relatively easy product to deliver. I don't know why it takes them. Oh, I am bleeding. Well, that's not good. I might have to end this early here. I will say the unpredictability of live streaming. Well, folks, I will tell you that I give Endbringer is a 9. So I Sorcerer with Endbringer goes up to a 9 because I really enjoy the ability to play it solo, the ability to sort of have that experience by myself. And I am sorry about all the blood. That is not intentional here. So with that, I'm going to end things here. So Sorcerer itself is an 8, and with the Endbringer expansion, it is a 9. I recommend you try it if you can find it. Nobody really seems to be talking about it, so I don't know how easy or hard it is to find, but I enjoy it. And with that, I guess I'm going to end this and go and deal with my nose. So I'm going to wish you safe travels and courage when you need it, and I hope to see you back next week for another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.